Hello, Irish fans, and welcome to Dome and Domer, the oldest Notre Dame podcast on the planet. Joining me tonight, Ed Jordanek. Also joining from IndyNation.com, Mike Coffey. Ed, I'll start with you. We had one of our loyal listeners reach out to us before the game, and we were kind of going back and forth. And he's kind of a big time guy on social media, but he asked that we don't mention his name for fear of retribution, knowing that he listens to this show. But um, he, interestingly, he brought up a couple points, and one of the things I just wanted to mention because he kind of asked us. I mean, in
What the
case you
hell's wrong
don't
with you
know,
people?
if you listen to this show and you don't know this truly is an online conversation. We don't start this show and kind of map out, hey, I'm going to ask you this question here.
Oh,
There's no pre-production here. This is
what?
we get on here and
No.
within a minute we start 1, 2, 3, let's
Yeah,
go.
boom. And it would
Um,
have been sooner, except we were commiserating about the basketball game.
right,
So yeah,
exactly.
this is just
So
kind of click go.
We haven't talked since the last time we did this. I
Yeah,
mean,
right, and
seriously,
so
it's the
right,
last
and
time I
so
saw you guys.
my point is, this is a perfect lead into what I'm about to do because I've been saving this speech for the last 3
Oh
weeks,
boy, here we
and
go.
this will be a truly honest.
Should I go get a drink while we do? Okay.
No, but I mean, it's going to point out the point of how we do the show because you guys are unaware of what I'm about to say. So your reaction is going to be true. It's going to be a very honest reaction to what I'm about to say. And it's going to take me like 60 seconds to do this. So hang on a second.
Oh
But I'll start
God.
with you first, Ed. Here's my point. Let's rewind to Northern Illinois and the loss and what transpired after that, the kind of response, which is normal. But having said that, I specifically stated that I'm a huge Notre Dame Marcus Freeman fan, and I am for a bunch of different reasons. Some are a little strange, probably to you guys, but I like the fact that he's young, he's energetic, he has a way of resonating with the players in the world that we live in now today. It's a different world, it's a different mentality, it's a different environment. And I kind of saw that he had that capability to resonate with them. And that's why I was a big fan of his. But I will tell you that what really did it for me, and this is what probably is the strange part of my assessment of him, is when I found out that he converted to Catholicism.
I knew that was
You
coming.
know, think about that. The Notre Dame head football coach converts to Catholicism. How else can you placate to the crowd except for doing that, right? Was that a calculated move on his part? In my mind, I don't think it was at all. I honestly believe this is a very sincere dude. And for me, I was like, oh my God, that's a serious dude. And but having said all that, the part that was difficult for me was I didn't like the fact that fans at Notre Dame were booing at the end of the game. And to be honest with you, what even hurt for me, what was worse was the following weekend against Louisville at halftime, they were doing it. There were boos coming down, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is going on here? What are we doing? Are we at that point? Now, having said all that, here we are, 11-1. We are in the playoffs. Who possibly, as a Notre Dame fan, could be upset with where we're at right now? And I would just like to say that for all of those people that were part of those boos, you owe it to yourselves to go buy tickets to the playoffs, get your ass in there at freezing cold temperatures, and cheer this team on, even if, in fact, if we do lose the first game. Who cares? Doesn't matter. We're there. He got us there. You owe it to yourselves for retribution for the idiocracy of you booing during those games. And how else could we be excited about the football program as where it's at right now?
Can I offer an alternative perspective?
You may, because it's a
Jane, you
conversation.
ignorant
Yeah.
This
slut.
is not, you had no idea that was coming, so do your
Yeah, no,
point.
I had no idea. I had no idea. I mean, I think regarding your first point, I think it's a pretty the latest in a long line of simple explanations that go along with happy wife, happy life. I mean,
There you go.
guys convert all the time to keep peace at home. Especially when you've got kids that are going to a Catholic school and going through all that stuff, like, so good for him. I think I'm sure that sort of the presence of faith that still, permeates a lot of things on campus rubs off after a while. And you're like, hey, these people are serious about this. And it causes you to sort of look into your own world and see things. So I'm sure it's sincere. I'm sure it's genuine, and good for him. On your second point, the amount of money that college sports has become, the coach is making tons of money. Now the players.
Yeah, but Freeman's not making that much money right now.
Oh, no,
not at the moment.
Not yet.
Whoa.
Not yet. No, but at this very moment, he's not compared to the other guys.
Making $6 million a year.
I don't think he's making that much.
Well,
maybe I'm wrong about that, but I thought
yeah.
that he was below that.
I don't think he is, but even if he's making 4, okay, he's one playoff win away from making 9.
Of course, but he deserves it at that point, right?
Well, yeah. But what I'm saying is that, I think what goes along with the professionalization of college athletics is the right for fans to express their opinions in any way, in a civil way. And in athletics, it's always been to boo. I don't have any problem with fans, hometown fans, expressing their displeasure. The product on the field sucked the whole day against Northern Illinois, and it sucked in the first half against Louisville. And there are people who are not, who think it's their God-given right to boo a poor performance. Now, I tend to take a different view. I'm never going to boo a Notre Dame team, just because I think it's, I'm kind of from an era when these kids were all amateurs. They were classmates. I still feel some connection to them as human beings. Most people don't. I mean, most people don't feel a connection to, players and coaches, et cetera. I mean, living in South Bend, I see them around. I see them with their families. I see their kids. So it's a little different, I think, when you see them as human beings. And how sort of, I remember, hanging out with Jerry Faust's kids. They went through hell. They're friends of mine in high school, and it was miserable for them. So, but that was a different era, and so I don't really, I think it's a minority of people that boo. Some of them. Let's put it this way: Notre Dame fans in general are good sports fans, are good football fans. Ohio State fans in general are scum. They're just awful people. No, seriously, they're just so
mouth-breathing troglodytes.
No,
but Georgia fans were walking out of the stadium in the fourth quarter. I mean, they didn't even wait for the end of the game, and they ended up winning.
No, but I'm just talking about behavior. Literally, they.
Well, I think the Ohio State, Michigan. That's
there's a whole bunch of them that want to run Ryan Day out of town. For going 66-10. So
exactly,
over 7 years. So
it's crazy.
I get it. The Michigan's a rival. These things go in waves. Okay, they had Michigan's number for how long? 5-6 years before this latest thing. So just chill the F out. By the way, you have a chance to win a national championship. Michigan doesn't.
Exactly.
So, so who cares? I mean, these rivalries, I'm sorry, they're going by the wayside. Deal with it. But anyways, that's just my perspective. I get it. It's not fun to hear, home fans boo. But by the same token, we all sat here on this show, and I guarantee you, we would not be in a great mood if we hadn't run the table.
Well, no, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm with you there. But I don't, Coffee, you're younger than Ed and I. Were you one of those guys that was booing in any one of those two games, or?
I wasn't in the stadium from either one of those two games. Was I yelling at my television screen? Yes, I absolutely was. But I was at Miami.
That's a different story. You're private, nobody hears it. But when you're in the stadium, when everybody can hear it,
no doubt. Well, I was at the Miami, Ohio game, and the crowd was a little restless there, though they were ahead. I mean, there was still the offense took like a quarter or so of the season to really, really get its feet under it against teams that had any semblance of a pulse. They do now, which is great. I concur completely with Ed from the standpoint that I would never boo a Notre Dame team, no matter how poorly they played. I am younger than you guys, but I am also of the age where John Foley and Stan Smigalo were living down the hallway from me. Tim Brown was carrying his Heisman up the stairs of my dorm my freshman year. So I feel a connection that maybe the current group doesn't. I know that in the last 10, 15 years, it's gravitated a little more towards the players are living off campus and they're not necessarily living with other students, especially past freshman year. And if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. I mean, I'm not going to pound my fist and scream at a cloud and say it needs to be back the way it was when I was here. But I do agree with Ed in that people are making a lot of money. I'm never going to boo a Notre Dame team that is made up of players who will soon join me in the alumni ranks. I just don't feel right doing that. Now, did I complain about the game? Yeah, I was on with you guys right after the game complaining about it. And I was answering just before my wife and I went down to the Georgia Tech game. I was at an event for one of my cousins won an award, and I was talking with my other cousin, Dan McGrath, who used to be the sports editor at the Chicago Tribune. Of course, we talk about Notre Dame whenever we get together. And I told him I'm still not necessarily convinced that Marcus Freeman is the guy. I'm a hell of a lot more convinced now than I was then. I mean, results matter, don't they?
Yeah.
I think looking at the performances since then, I mean, I understand, like, if they announced tomorrow that Marcus Freeman was getting an extension, I would be completely fine with that. I know there are other people out there who wouldn't necessarily be. I'm not going to begrudge them that. But I think, as you said, those people need to open their eyes a little bit and realize that this isn't the team that lost to NIU.
Listen, I guarantee you there are people watching or listening to this podcast right now who are not enjoying the fact that we've got a home playoff game coming up. They're pissed off that we're between 10 and 15 in the 2025 recruiting rankings, right?
Yeah,
so
right, exactly.
Well, that discomfits me a little bit, but I see your point and I agree with it.
Who are the best players on this year's team, or who are the best freshmen on this year's team? Leonard Moore, 3 stars. Okay, I mean,
good point.
They've got to look at Aeneas Williams. I didn't know who the hell this guy was. I think he was a 3-star back, but he obviously knows what he's doing, and he's earned the trust of this this team in Denbrock to be in there on third downs. Key plays, key moments of the game. So, I mean, I think you've got to sort of look at the results. Again, you can make all kinds of nitpicks and excuses. The schedule wasn't that tough, et cetera, all these kinds of things, the recruiting. But, you also can look at it and say, you lost 2, defensive ends of starting caliber. You lost 2 offensive linemen of that were starters, and you lost an All-American defensive back. I mean, that's, all teams lose guys, during the season.
Yeah.
Michigan had their starting tight end and I think a safety or a cornerback out, and they still beat Ohio State. So you just have to rise above that stuff. I would argue that I don't think I've seen a Notre Dame team this deep in terms of talent.
Yeah, at least in the last 15 years, at least at a minimum. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's for sure. So, let's pivot a little bit to some of the game stuff and then what we saw. I'm a little, I'm kind of curious. There's only one play in the entire game that kind of sticks in my mind and it scratches my head a little bit. And I would love to, just absolutely love to look behind the scenes and find out how exactly this happened. But I'll ask you first, Coffee, that interception that Leonard threw, I gotta believe that either one, the receiver was an option either up top or cut underneath. And I'm thinking that Leonard thought he was cutting underneath. And because Leonard is the guy that he is, he's not going to call that out and bring that up. He's just going to swallow it and own it. But I know that some of the guys on the team were kind of jibing him that, hey, man, that interception, you could have fair caught that thing. You could have just, you could have waved your hand and fair caught it.
I wonder also if I mean, I'm bringing the play back in my memory, but it seemed that he didn't really have his feet under him when he threw, and I don't know whether like
He did kind of
got
step back a little
pressured
bit.
or
He floated it, but
didn't
it just,
truly like step into it.
I mean, it was so uncharacteristic of how the guy has played in the last 6 games to just throw some. It was almost like Northern Illinois all over again, right?
No, that's true.
It was just like oh my God, I'm just going to toss this up there. And to me, I'm like, okay, that's either a one play, oh my God, I just whiffed it, or this was a total misread. I thought he was going underneath, but yet I'm not going to call that out and admit to that. I'm just going to swallow this.
I don't know if it was necessarily a misread, because he had a guy going long. I can't remember if that was Bo Collins or who that was, and but it seemed like he had him long, but and the ball didn't really get there with any kind of power that I saw. So I think if he was looking for the guy to
totally
curl up to an underground,
yeah,
he would put the ball there and the ball would have gotten there quickly. I think part of the reason it got picked was because it kind of had a wounded duck aspect to it. But so that's why I think he was going for the long pass, but for whatever reason, either didn't fully step in or lost grip on the ball or whatever.
I mean,
but
it was from an optics standpoint, it was pretty bad. I mean, you just saw that.
No doubt.
If you were to watch that replay, you'd be like, oh my God, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But Ed, to his credit, he came back and threw an absolute beauty to Mitchell Evans there in the corner of the end zone, and kind of totally recovered himself. Not only that, but I think Riley Leonard again for the probably 5th game in a row has done an unbelievable job of tucking it and running right at the right moment, like literally making a very good decision to tuck in and run it when he did. And I think his athleticism showed when he outran that dude for USC who had the angle on him, and he literally outran him. He literally beat him to the spot. And it just goes to show like how deceivingly fast he is and what that brings to the table for us, which is why I think that Notre Dame is a legit threat in the playoffs this season. Is you take Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, and Price all in the same backfield. That are 3 legitimate threats to take it at any point, especially when the field is 30 yards or less. I mean, man, that is a difficult ask for a defense to defend that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think they punted once on Saturday. It was a great punt and an important time, by the way. It was a clutch punt. They lined up to punt twice. But the offense has come a long way. To me, what was interesting was, you remember after last week, Denbrock was on the record of taking responsibility for being a little stubborn in terms of some of the goal line calls or the calls inside the 5, where he ran Leonard, right into the teeth of the defense a couple times, and he kind of, took responsibility for that and put that on him and said he could have been a little bit more creative and, ran something a little bit different. I actually thought that this Saturday it was Golden who was being a little bit stubborn.
I agree with you there. I think it's a good point.
The defense all year has had a winning formula, which is blitz, 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 leave guys out on islands because they can handle it, because they can cover. Well, that was not working on Saturday, and he just kept bringing guys. And I think sometimes you have to sort of face reality, face facts, and rush 3, rush 4, play a little zone, flood the defensive backfield a little bit with bodies, keep it in front of you and try and force field goals instead of putting your defensive backs out there. The chances for a PI go way up. The chances for a 30-yard play go way up. And obviously Southern Cal has some athletes and has some, receivers. And I also think that this quarterback impressed me for USC.
I agree with you. I was the same way.
But we never.
He threw some unbelievable balls, like right at the point of The point of
Exactly.
accuracy that he threw it to was ridiculous
Right.
on at least 3 or 4 of them.
Right. But I don't think, I mean, when you play that much man, and have that many one-on-one matchups, I think what happens is a quarterback can sort of get away with going after their primary target, or going, throwing to their primary target, or being a little bit off and having a receiver win a 50-50 ball. What I thought we didn't do is I didn't think we made him check down enough. Like, I didn't think we made him, we didn't confuse him enough, and we couldn't, because we had 6 guys rushing in on him.
Yeah, there was right. He just had to cover the rush,
yeah,
right?
and he has a good offensive line. Southern Cal has
Yeah.
had a good offensive line all year. We caught a break that Marks got hurt early. I don't think their backup running back is as good as ours, or their running back 1A is as good as our 1A by a long shot. So anyways, I'm really going to be curious, whoever Notre Dame plays in this next game, how the defense plays. Now, granted, I think a pass rush suffers when you don't have Howard Cross taking up 2 linemen on almost every play. That's where he's really valuable. Not that he's going to be your all-time sack leader, but he's going to give Burnham and Snead and Bryce Young and these guys a little bit of help, because he's going to be occupying a center and a guard, or a guard and tackle.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. Coffee, I'm curious about so here's what I would tell you in terms of Marcus Freeman. He's in his 3rd year. Okay. So but what's different about him being in his 3rd year and every other Notre Dame coach that's, that marquee moment, the 3rd year, he's in his 3rd year of head coaching. Like, this is not him in his 3rd year at Notre Dame, and he's got a ton of experience behind him. He's in his 3rd year of head coaching. And what I would say is, I think the interesting aspect of that will be that where I see Freeman at right now today is, I see him as a guy, a young coach who has figured out that, okay, I definitely have the passion to win this football game. I have the passion to lead a football team to win. I know what it takes from a discipline standpoint. That's my background. That's where I'm from. I know what it takes to make a commitment. I know all that stuff. But what now comes into play is, and Ed kind of alluded to this a little bit, but you have to adjust in the moment that you're in. You have to have the forthright to be able to see that, okay, if in fact we as a defense have been push all season long, and now we're in a situation where that's not working in the middle of the game, can you adjust? Can you see what's happening in the moment in time, and then adjust, and then be able to win your players over with, hey, I know we've done this 12 games in a row, but guess what? We're going to switch right now. Buy into this, believe in me, and here's why we're going to do this. I think the whole strategy and cerebral part of the game is where Freeman he needs to take that next step. That's his next big challenge, which is, okay, it's great to play off of the NIU loss, and you can ride that maybe for an entire season. But when you get into the playoffs, the difference between you and another team is like this much, especially when the talent's there. And so Freeman's going to have to make a cerebral call that's different than what he's been forced to make all season long, at least in my mind. I think that's where he's at now, and that's his next big challenge as a head football coach.
No, I think you're right. I think it's a natural occurrence when you have, I mean, he's, as you pointed out, young guy early in his career. You have coordinators with significantly more experience than you have. And I think when you are in a position where you are dealing with more experienced assistant coaches, it's difficult sometimes to like impose your decision making on them, which, as you pointed out, that's something he's going to have to learn how to do, because when you are the head coach, the buck stops on your desk.
Yeah.
If Golden, I mean, Al Golden's that defense has had a great year, no doubt about it. Personally, I think we started seeing some fatigue, especially in the second half. I mean, after
Yeah,
being
guys are
in
beat up. There's
New
no doubt
York
about
the
that.
previous
Yeah.
week, and you've got guys playing a lot more snaps, I think, than anyone expected. I mean, with as you pointed out, the players that are missing, the backups are. I mean, it's great that Notre Dame's had quality depth, but that depth has really been tested over the last few weeks because they've had to play a lot and they've had to travel a lot, which again, getting back to that intergalactically
Yeah,
stupid
I
decision to
agree. Yeah.
go play in New York. But I think I agree with you that Freeman's next step in his coaching life, in the whatever of his coaching career, is going to be taking control in situations like that. I think that's difficult when you have older coordinators and stuff like that. But every coach has gone through it. I mean, I'm sure that when Lou Holtz or Nick Saban and all that were head coaches for the first time, they didn't have a bunch of younger guys with them, at least not as far as I know. I'm sure someone's going to look it up and prove me wrong, but uh, you have to be willing to take control. You have to grab the reins and you have to say, all right, we are in this situation. I know you're saying to do A, but we need to do B because whichever they end up doing, the result is going to end up
Yeah, it falls to
being
Freeman.
Freeman's
He's the guy.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Well, think about it for a second. Who's his youngest, least experienced coordinator? Who's most like him as who's most a peer to him?
I mean, Dylan McCullough's probably the only guy, right?
No,
I mean,
coordinator. It's
oh,
Oh,
it,
for,
it's special
coordinator.
teams.
It's nobody
It's
close.
special teams, and look what Freeman has done in special teams. They don't you don't run a fake punt without the
Yeah.
head coach signing off on it, right?
Yeah.
You don't,
Well,
so
actually,
you
and
run three
kind
fake punts in 3 different games.
yeah,
exactly.
I was just going
So
to make
I
that
think he
point,
will.
and I'm not to
No, I
cut
just
you
think
off, but
I
I'm
just
just
think Mike Coffey makes a great point, and I think he will gain that confidence with the other coordinators. With other he will. That's part of growing into a head coach, is having that sort of conviction and that experience and that confidence to overrule
yeah,
a
yeah,
coach on your staff who has much more experience and much more, right, because you've got a feel for the big picture. And I think that probably watching game film last Sunday and this Sunday, he was like, I should have freaking put the hammer down on Denbrock if he's going to keep running Riley Leonard into the middle of the line. And this past Sunday, he said, I should have told Al, like let's try a little, three,
yeah,
3-man rush, 8, flood the zones kind of thing. So
yeah.
I'm sure those are all learning experiences. And the great thing is that, for us, is that he's gotten that experience while winning 10 games in a row. Um,
Exactly right.
that
Some of
makes
that,
it a lot.
to that point, I'm just kind of curious, and you can make an argument literally that Marcus Freeman is an innovator in college football with that 4th and 9. I mean, I know the analytics on 4th and 2 or 4th and 1 will say go for it, but that was 4th and 9 from your own 24? Was it
Something like that.
24?
Yeah.
Something like, I mean, look, can you imagine if that play didn't go through? Like if USC would have punched it in and now we're down 14-7 or whatever it was. But just the mere fact that Freeman was confident enough and had clearly scouted that play out. I mean, it's pretty obvious that they saw something. They were pretty damn confident this was
listen,
going to work. And
th
he
those
ran it.
plays, yeah, and those plays are most likely to work when they're unexpected. And
And,
of
but it
course,
has a psychology when you pull that off. When it's 4th and 9 from the
right.
24 and you pull that off, the defense for USC is like, freaking A, man, can we get off the damn field? Like what?
Well, here's the psychology of Marcus Freeman that I think is sort of underappreciated. And this is one of those instances. It doesn't always come out this way, but I think sometimes there are real advantages of having a head coach who played the sport at a high level. I mean, this is a super competitive guy, and all coaches are competitive, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a different type of competitiveness, I think, when you've been a a high school All-American, highly recruited college athlete, a starter, and then a professional draft pick. Um, I think that's what's shown through over the last 10 weeks. I mean, he's been, like I said last week, he's been surly, he's been pissed off. And this is a guy that, works out with his players, runs every morning, lifts. I mean, when you watch him during the course of a game, he's as close to playing without having pads on
Yeah,
as
he
any
is.
coach that
I agree.
as any coach that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is something that players really relate to. They really feel like he's going to battle with them, literally, not just metaphorically, but literally. And I think that has given him an edge, and it really fit this team's personality, especially younger players, that they've had to rely on. So, that to me has been sort of his. Now, every team is different, right? Like, this approach might not work with next year's team, with an inexperienced quarterback, with a mishmash of guys, because they're going to have to go into the portal, for some guys again. But that's what I like about Marcus Freeman the most is, it's really funny. Like, the last couple of weekends, when the camera's on him, there were not a lot of people, oh my gosh, Marcus Freeman, the language he uses, like the same people that would have jumped all over Brian Kelly,
Exactly,
for MFing up and down the sidelines, give Marcus Freeman a free pass. Maybe because of his, being a new, St. Pius parishioner. I don't know, but
and now we circle back to the Catholicism thing.
Yeah, there you go.
No, but that's what happens when you're a winner, right? That's what happens when you win.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. And the other thing is,
you're a winner and you're not an ass.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. Yeah. You feel like, he's one of us. Brian Kelly was never, quote unquote, one of us.
Right.
And in a short period of time, Marcus Freeman has kind of come across as one of us, despite being a Ohio State grad, and bouncing around the coaching ranks and, all this different thing. But he seems to have bought into Notre Dame.
And even if he hasn't, he's smart enough to make it look like he has. And I'm not claiming insincerity and all that, but that was Brian Kelly's biggest weakness. He never bought in, and he let you know it, which was dumb.
Yeah.
Well, I would disagree. I would say that after 2016, he changed his tune, and I don't necessarily think it was particularly sincere or authentic, but
he got pulled aside though. Don't forget, he got pulled aside and said, "You have to change your tune."
Exactly. But he was smart enough.
He
to
did
say, if I'm gonna, I've got to sort of change the way that I approach this and stop trying to turn Notre Dame into Cincinnati and use the strengths that exist on this campus for the betterment of the program. And he did that. And the results demonstrate that. So I think Marcus Freeman is more sincere. He buys in, and he's smart, but he also knows how to use those things to his advantage, like every good coach does.
Sure.
But I don't think it's just after a game in the heat of the battle, when you're talking with a sideline reporter and you talk about the university, and why this is important for the university, and why this is important for, that stuff doesn't occur to most coaches right after the game unless they really feel that way. And unless they mean it. So, listen, he's a really crappy performance away in the first playoff game, in a loss to SMU from, being, getting the proctology exam from whoever is contacting you, Mike, the loyal listener. That's
right.
Whatever. But that's just part of being a Notre Dame football coach.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But I do think we've got the right guy for the job. And like I've said over and over and over again, the thing I like about Marcus Freeman the most is he is obviously a lifelong learner. Like, Brian Kelly stopped learning 10 years ago. Like, he knows it all.
Yep.
Marcus Freeman. No, I mean, he is constantly searching for self-improvement, and the players say that.
Well, he's willing to listen to it. He's humble enough to be able to hear what he thinks. And that was one of the interesting things that I heard from the coach from NIU is his conversation with Freeman. He thought that Freeman was totally sincere when he was asking him, "Hey, how did you prepare for us? Like, what is it you saw?" And he really felt that Marcus was asking him in sincerity.
Sure.
And I think it was, I agree with that. I think he was. I think he was saying to myself, how the hell did we not see this? What did you guys see? And that just goes to show how bought Ian is. But anyways, it's going to be interesting. I'll start with you, Coffee. What's your prediction on who do you think Notre Dame faces in that home game?
I think ESPN wants a Notre Dame Alabama game like nobody's business. And I think whatever has to happen in the rankings to make that happen is going to happen. Unfortunately, because I don't like the Jalen Milrose matchup or anything like that. I like the fact that I think the defense will be a lot closer to full strength. I like the fact that these games won't count against red shirts. So basically anyone we've seen along the way is eligible to play and isn't going to hurt their isn't going to be able to hurt their eligibility. You mentioned Aeneas Williams. Maybe we'll see him here and there. But I think it's going to end up being Alabama because that's what ESPN wants.
Yeah, it's interesting. What do you think, Ed? Are you?
I don't know. I haven't studied it that closely, but I do think that nobody in this tournament scares me.
Yeah.
And I don't think that like it might have been a year or two or three ago, and I would it would have been like, oh crap, Alabama or shoot Georgia,
Right.
or whatever. But I don't really feel that way this time. Not that I think Notre Dame's the favorite to win the national championship. I just think that they can match up and basically go into the fourth quarter with any team in this tournament, including Oregon. And I think that they're better than Penn State, and I think they're better than Boise, and I think they're better than Tennessee, and I think they're better than a lot of teams that are going to be in this 12-team tournament, and the rest of them they're kind of a coin flip, or maybe it's 60-40 or 40-60 or whatever. So but I think that somewhere along the way to win a national championship you're going to play a team from the SEC. It's inevitable. So might as well test yourself and get one out of the way, because if you're going to have to play Alabama or Georgia or Tennessee, you want to play them on December 20th in South Bend. So let's do that and worry about that and get through that, and and see if we can survive and advance. So I don't know who it's going to be. I think it's really dangerous to sort of play the game of like, oh gosh, SMU, and now we can glide right past that and then play Boise.
No, at this point everybody's decent. Yeah. There's no hiding anymore with this.
No.
Interestingly, I kind of think that Notre Dame's gonna slip into that fifth spot. I think Penn State's not gonna play very well against Oregon. I don't know why. I've seen Penn State play twice.
They should have lost to Minnesota, maybe.
This time Oregon's the one who's going to have to travel cross country this time. So
yeah, but it's going to be inside. It's indoors. I think that favors Oregon. They got elite athletes. They've got, you want a game where there's no weather conditions that impact it, and they got that. So I think I lean heavily towards Oregon, and I just think it's gonna be a multiple score win for them. I think Notre Dame bumps into that fifth spot. And then I think there's going to be some chaos a little bit, whether it be the ACC, where, the lower team seed wins and they're going to get the 12th seed and we end up playing them. But regardless, like you say, it doesn't really matter at this point because everybody you face is legit. You got 12 teams, not a lot separating anybody from the top to the bottom, except maybe Oregon in the top three, or maybe even Oregon and, Texas. But I just think there's a ton of equality in college football at the moment because of the world that we're in right now. There isn't the old days of Alabama having three deep. That just doesn't exist anymore. Those guys that are the third string, they're playing somewhere where they're getting paid. So they're no longer on that team sitting in the back waiting for their time. And therefore, that being the case, it's even things out, but which is great because you can easily get a path to the final championship game, and then anything can happen at that point. And like you say, I don't think Notre Dame is scared of Oregon in the least bit. I think there's a way that we match up with them. It's just a matter of do we execute on that given day.
Well, I think we all have to sort of grudgingly admit that, Daddy Swarbucks knew what he was doing. I mean,
yes,
I think
in a strange sort of way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think in you could make, like in the real world, there should be a reseeding after the first round.
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
But
yeah,
there
no
is-
doubt.
Or who would have thought that what world makes any sense that if Notre Dame is 12-0 and number one in the country, we're going to accept the fact that we're not going to get a bye? Like, where does that make any sense whatsoever? Who would agree to that if the top four conference champions all have one or two losses? Notre Dame's undefeated, but yeah, we'll still accept a fifth round seeding. Like, what sense does that make? That doesn't make any sense at all. Like,
Yeah,
who would
but
agree
I
with
think
that?
also, I think you'd also make an argument that being seated fifth is better than being seated first.
Yeah, you can, because you're
Mhm.
going to play the fourth seed in the first, playoff game
Right,
if you win your first round.
Yeah, but also because I think you get a little bit better rhythm. You play in 2 weeks, not
Yeah,
3. So,
yeah.
I mean, I hope they do away with the conference championship games. I think they're kind of superfluous now. That
I think they should. They should
Especially
get rid
since
of
a lot of those conferences don't have divisions anymore. So now it's just
Right.
two
Get
like
rid of them. It
random
doesn't make any
teams that
sense
play
to
each
me.
other. It's
Yeah.
stupid.
Oh,
Yeah.
we could go on and on. It's so fun.
That's right. Well, plenty more to talk about. We'll see what happens after this weekend, because that'll finalize everything.
Yeah.
And then I
This
think
show didn't go at all as we planned it. So
exactly.
where's
all
my
scripted.
script?
Exactly. All right, good deal. We'll leave it there. You've been listening to Dome and Domer, an online conversation, truly a conversation
Yes.
about Notre Dame sports from a fan's perspective. I'm Mike Brammer, saying goodbye for Ed Dranick and Mike Coffey from ND Nation. See you guys. Thanks.
Thanks for listening.